Doamnelor și domnilor, îl avem în studioul TVR Moldova astăzi pe domnul Beka Bagelit, care este directorul de programe pe Caucaz de la Institute for War and Peace Reporting, cu care vom discuta despre importanța securității informaționale din perspectivă mediatică. Domnule Beka, bună seara! Good evening! I was mentioning that today we will be talking about the informational security from media perspective. Why this topic is so important today for our countries, the countries in the Eastern Partnership. Domnule Bagelit, astăzi vom discuta despre subiectul securității informaționale din perspectivă mediatică. De ce acest subiect este atât de important pentru țările noastre, țările din parteneriatul estic?
Thank you, Victoria, for inviting me to your program. In 2008, I think that was the most important part of understanding why information is important and what kind of threats information can pose to a country was a decisive moment. The war with Russia in August 2008, and later the occupation of Crimea and the armed conflict in parts of eastern Ukraine actually showed that information has been used as an extension of warfare, and then the term has been coined immediately, which is weaponizing information. And various stakeholders, experts and societies in these countries, they started to observe how this works, and it was an eye-opening moment for certain communities to realize that information has been used to manipulate it with the attitudes of people and to actually distribute certain propagandistic content for the purpose of discrediting these countries, particularly from the Russian media sources, and there is a need at the moment to understand this properly and to implement and enforce certain safeguards, so to protect the citizens of these countries from the malign interference. And this malign interference at the moment we can observe at various levels. It's the political interference, the political domestic affairs of these countries, into geostrategic or foreign courses of these countries, and this is particularly strongly present in the immediate neighborhood of Russia, which is mainly former Soviet states bordering Russia from the south towards west across the Black Sea. And the countries like Ukraine, Moldova and Georgia are the most affected by various types of disinformation. And the disinformation we observe has certain outcomes, and what we see is the disintegration of certain political landscapes in this country, increased tensions between the political entities, the discords and disagreements in various parts of the societies on issues of whether becoming part or not of NATO or European Union, joining certain Western institutions or not. And this has been diverting all of us from the core issues that our society should be dealing with. And the struggle still continues. And the purpose of me being here in Chisinau is to understand together with our partners in Moldova how this can be understood better and what kind of measures can be undertaken to safeguard the societies in these countries.
Mr. Bagelit, also one important thing is the actors who are involved in securing the informational space, and media as well as civil society are two important actors in this equation. Why do you think that we should encourage the cooperation between central authorities, between regional authorities, but also the civil society and the media? media institutions. Domnule Bageliț, de asemenea, un element important sau actori importanți în această ecuație, în primul rând în securizarea spațiului informațional, sunt instituțiile media și de asemenea societatea civilă. Dumneavoastră considerați, sau de ce considerați dumneavoastră că ar trebui să încurajăm cooperarea dintre instituțiile centrale și autoritățile publice locale de a coopera mult mai activ cu organizațiile societății civile și cu instituțiile media pentru a proteja spațiul informațional?
The interaction between these groups that have a special expertise in understanding how media landscape operates in EU's eastern neighborhood is very important. Otherwise, we will risk to end up with regulations that can potentially pose a risk to freedom of speech. That's a core achievement of our countries, and that's why the participation of all good actors that can propose effective measures or can analyze the landscape better and help the regulating institutions determine the degrees of intervention. That's very important. There is no ready recipe anywhere, and these are just the countries that are trying themselves to pave the way into this unknown, to tap the way into this unknown area, and there are attempts already to regulate actually bad actors that disseminate propaganda and misinformation, but various experiences exist across the EU's neighborhood. I think the example of Georgia can be one of the good ones. It's mainly Georgian media community tries to impose and communicate the values of self-regulation, which means that media organizations should set more clear editorial policies, safeguarding their platforms from the influence of propagandistic content, and likewise doing similar protections to their readers. In other states, there are attempts to regulate the inflow of information from Russia, let's say, to impose certain bans on the content, which was practiced in Georgia before 2012. It was effective at some point, but then the demand and the power of this information was so strong, and in the context of contemporary media and technologies, this appears to be very hard to control, time-consuming and expensive in terms of consumption of resources, spending resources on this. And I think we have to employ very sensitive tools to approach this issue and engage as many capable actors as possible, not only from in-country communities, but from across the entire region that are primarily affected by the consequences of disinformation.
If we are talking about disinformation, there are different ways to fight disinformation. Some of them are more efficient, others are less efficient. From your perspective, what do you think that should be the strategy behind fighting disinformation? Domnule Bageliț, dacă tot vorbim despre dezinformare, sunt diferite instrumente care vin să contracareze acest fenomen. Din perspectiva dumneavoastră, care sunt instrumentele cele mai eficiente pentru a combate dezinformarea?
I don't have research statistics on this, but our observation shows that more and more people are becoming aware of certain information that is clearly undermining certain ethical rules and the best good ethical practices. And let's say we see that more people are reporting in social media platforms to these management of the social media companies about this kind of content, and I think this is part of that. It shows that if the media literacy, if the capacity of citizens improves in understanding and determining what's the ethical and good journalism content and what's the bad content, the better it is for the security, long-term security of the society, and in addition to other measures, I think, and desirably non-state regulating measures, there must be also educational measures implemented from the early stages of education, including additional campaigns that can help the public understand how this can be tackled at citizen level and not at a particular government agency level.
Also, what is very important, and here in Moldova we are discussing quite a lot, is the phenomena of propaganda. And we are talking about internal propaganda, but mostly what we are talking about is the external propaganda. Practically about the internal propaganda we don't discuss because we don't consider it to be a propaganda. Do you think that in order to secure the informational space we should define both internal and external propaganda as practically violating the freedom of speech, but also the access to information and to truthful information at the same time? Domnule Bageliț, în Republica Moldova se vorbește mai mult despre propagandă externă decât despre propagandă internă. Din punctul dumneavoastră de vedere, pentru a proteja spațiul informațional, dar de asemenea și libertatea de expresie, dar și accesul la informație veridică, credeți că trebuie să vorbim și despre propagandă internă și fenomenul propagandei interne?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't differentiate internal or external. Propaganda is an instrument that has particular purpose for the benefit of a particular group, and the societies in these countries actually opened their minds and eyes to this after these conflicts in 2008, not in early 90s when the region faced the conflicts in Transnistria, in Abkhazia, in South Ossetia, or Nagorno-Karabakh. The propaganda started working actually from those times, and the awareness of how to differentiate the information was so low that they were not actually calling that a propaganda or it was unethical or bad information. The war is bad, but these wars actually brought this awareness at the same time. What we observe is that power of propaganda is growing every time, and it's becoming more sophisticated, more refined, and it targets more at psychological level, causing cognitive ease. The content is becoming simple, like black and white reporting, stereotypical, promoting prejudices, so it doesn't require from the viewer or listener or reader to think much, and it causes certain content and satisfaction in certain groups, and that is why in Georgia, for example, we are observing the growth of radical groups, whether they are religious or national, and this threat can be replicated in other parts of the EU's Eastern Neighborhood region. I think the powerful tool here is the language. The external propaganda is coming through the broadcasting media from Russia, and reaches out the minds of consumers through the knowledge of Russian language, and the Russian language is one of the lingua francas in this region, and once there is a need to undermine someone, a country or a politician that opposes the interests of Russian political elites, this propaganda begins to work intensively, and it's a local agents. They are repeating these at a national level in national languages, particularly in countries like Georgia, where they have their own alphabet and their own language, and it takes more time, it takes more resources to translate, but there are sufficient amount of local followers who do it quite enthusiastically, and identifying this and informing both internal actors who carry and disseminate this bad information is very important. You can't simply tell them that go and leave this place. Their engagement, their information, and increasing their awareness is also important for the long-term security and stability of the country. So I think the effort should be directed to that as well.
Mr. Bageliț, thank you very much for this interview, and we will be very glad to welcome you in the studios of TVR Moldova in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Victoria. My pleasure.